Yosemite. Granite cliffs rise like cathedrals, waterfalls thunder into mist, and ancient forests stretch deep into silence. It's one of America's most breathtaking landscapes. But behind the beauty are stories that will chill you to the bone, tales that remind us how quickly wonder can turn to fear. People go into Yosemite every year seeking adventure. Some never come back, their disappearances leaving only questions and whispers among those who follow the same trails. So, put on your headphones, because now the mystery begins. Michael Feisery was no stranger to Yosemite. At 51 years old, he was more than just a casual hiker. He was a seasoned outdoorsman who had spent over 2 decades navigating the park's backcountry. By the summer of 2005, the trails, waterfalls, and granite ridges of the park had become as familiar to him as the streets of his own hometown. On June 15th of that year, Michael set out from Hetch Hetchy Reservoir on what should have been a routine multi-day loop. He was carrying his gear, prepared for the journey, and confident in his ability to handle the challenges ahead. For someone of his experience, this was not an unusual trek, but this would be the last time anyone saw him alive. When Michael failed to return on schedule, rangers quickly organized a search. Yosemite officials are no strangers to rescue operations. Each year, countless hikers underestimate the wilderness and require assistance. But Michael's case was different. He wasn't a novice, and he had given no indication that anything was wrong. Then came the discovery that turned the mystery into something far stranger. Searchers located Michael's backpack near Rancheria Falls. It wasn't torn, it wasn't scattered, and it didn't appear abandoned in a panic. Instead, it was carefully placed on the ground as if he had set it down with the intention of coming back. His supplies were intact. But Michael himself was gone. The search that followed became one of the largest in Yosemite's history. More than 200 people joined in, rangers, volunteers, helicopters, cadaver dogs, and even climbing teams scouring sheer cliffs. They covered over 100 square miles, sweeping through dense forest, rocky canyons, and rushing rivers. The scale was immense, the manpower overwhelming, and yet the result was nothing. No torn clothing, no footprints leading away, no broken branches or signs of struggle, no body. For investigators, the questions piled up quickly. Why would an experienced backpacker set down his gear and walk away? Did something or someone force him to? Could he have suffered a medical emergency such as disorientation or sudden illness that led him to leave his pack behind? One possibility is that Michael wandered from the trail, became injured, and was simply missed during the search. Yosemite's terrain is unforgiving, filled with steep ravines and thick brush that can swallow a person completely. Even cadaver dogs can struggle when wind, water, and time erase the faint traces of human scent. Yet, for all the search efforts, the absence of any trace seemed almost impossible. Some quietly suggested foul play, though no evidence pointed that way. His pack had not been rifled through. There was no blood, no drag marks, no indication of another person's involvement. That left a more unsettling conclusion. Michael Feisery had vanished without explanation. For the rangers, it was deeply unsettling. Yosemite is a place of immense beauty, but also immense danger. Each year, people are swept over waterfalls, lost in snowstorms, or are trapped on cliffs. But Michael's disappearance didn't fit those patterns. Experienced, prepared, familiar with the land, he should not have been among the missing. In the years since, His case has become one of the park's most baffling mysteries. With no new evidence, no sightings, and no remains ever recovered, it lingers as an open wound. Speculation runs wild. Some believe Michael's disappearance was simply a tragic accident, that he slipped, fell, and his body lies in a crevice or beneath the waters of the Tuolumne River, hidden where no searcher has looked. Others suggest a more chilling possibility, that Yosemite is home to what locals sometimes whisper about, areas where people simply vanish, places where the wilderness itself seems to swallow intruders whole. Stories like Michael's are often grouped with a series of other baffling disappearances as part of the so-called missing 411 phenomena. To skeptics, it's nothing more than a tragic accident compounded by harsh terrain. To believers, it's evidence of something deeper, something unexplained lurking in the wild places we assume we understand. For Michael's loved ones, though, theories mean little. What remains is grief without closure, a backpack without its owner, a man who went into the wilderness, a place he knew well and never returned. Today, 2 decades later, Michael Fisery is still missing. No new leads have surfaced. His case remains unsolved. He is remembered not only as a skilled backpacker, but also as a ghost on the trail, a reminder that even the most experienced among us can disappear into the silence of the wilderness. His backpack remains the only clue, carefully placed as though waiting for his return, while his fate continues to haunt Yosemite's rugged canyons. But Michael wasn't the only one. A decade later, another man disappeared in Yosemite's high country, and this time, there wasn't even a backpack. And before we continue, if stories like these send chills down your spine, subscribe now, because we're just getting started. Peter Jackson was 74 years old, but age hadn't slowed him. A lifelong outdoorsman from the Bay Area, he had spent decades exploring Yosemite's trails, climbing its switchbacks and crossing its meadows. Friends and family knew him as cautious, capable, and deeply familiar with the high country. On September 17, 2016, Peter set out for what should have been a routine day hike near Vogelsang Peak. At just over 11,000 feet, the area is rugged but accessible, a place of alpine lakes, granite ridges, and long views across the Sierra. The weather was clear, skies open, and the trails well marked. Peter carried no overnight gear. He wasn't planning an ambitious trek, just a short hike in a place he knew well. But Peter never returned. When he missed his expected check-in, rangers quickly launched a search. Given his experience, they assumed he might have been delayed or taken a longer route. But as the hours stretched into days, the urgency grew. For a full week, Yosemite's search and rescue crews combed the terrain. Helicopters swept the ridges, scanning with infrared. Ground teams covered trails, slopes, and lake shores. Experienced climbers checked ledges and ravines. Every logical possibility was examined, yet nothing surfaced. No trekking poles, no clothing, no water bottle or scraps of gear, no footprints, broken brush, or dropped items. Not even in the seasons that followed, when the snow melted back to bare stone and meadow grass, did any sign of Peter emerge. It was as if the mountain had taken him whole. For rangers, the case was baffling. In Yosemite, hikers go missing every year, but most are eventually found. Even in tragedies, falls, drownings, animal encounters, there is usually some evidence, some piece of a story to explain what happened. But with Peter Jackson, there was nothing, so the questions multiplied. How does a seasoned hiker, vanish on a clear day from a familiar trail with no trace? Why was there silence, even after repeated searches in later years? Could he have suffered a sudden medical event, collapsing somewhere just out of sight? If so, his body should have been recovered, especially after winter passed. Others wonder if foul play could have played a role, though the remote high country makes such a theory unlikely. No other hikers reported anything suspicious. And then there are the stranger ideas. Yosemite has long been home to whispers of thin places, areas where the world feels different, where the line between here and somewhere else wears thin. To some, Peter's disappearance feels like one of those moments, a step off the trail, not into wilderness, but into absence. Years have passed, but no trace has ever surfaced. His family and the Yosemite community are left with an ache of unanswered questions. Peter Jackson didn't fit the pattern of the unprepared or the careless. He was cautious, capable, and simply walking a trail he had walked many times before. On a clear September day, beneath blue skies and the high granite of Vogelsang, Peter Jackson set out for a short hike. Somewhere along that trail, the world swallowed him whole. And to this day, he has not been found. And then there are the mysteries that happen not in the wilderness, but just steps from camp. Mysteries that remind us you don't have to go far to vanish. John Styvers was 47 years old when he decided to join friends on a camping trip to Railroad Flat Campground, tucked in the Merced River Canyon near Yosemite. He wasn't a stranger to the outdoors. Friends described him as social, easygoing, and always up for an adventure. The trip wasn't meant to be dangerous. It was simply a getaway, a chance to relax among the granite walls, the whisper of pine, and the cool rush of the Merced River. On the evening of June 9th, 2009, as the sun dropped and the shadows stretched long across the canyon, John told his friends he was going to take a short walk. Nothing unusual. Campers often wander a little ways from camp to stretch their legs, explore the surroundings, or just find a moment of quiet. He wasn't carrying gear, no pack, no flashlight, just a casual stroll before nightfall. But John never came back. When he didn't return after a reasonable time, his friends grew uneasy. They began searching, calling out into the twilight, checking nearby paths and the edge of the river. But there was no sign of him. No answer to their voices, no footprints in the dirt, no rustling in the brush. It was as if he had stepped off the trail and dissolved into the canyon. By nightfall, rangers were called. What followed was one of the most extensive search efforts the Merced River Canyon had seen. Ground teams swept the trails and underbrush. Helicopters circled overhead, scanning with floodlights. Scent dogs were brought in to follow a trace. Divers plunged into the river's cold depths, probing bends and eddies where a body might be caught. Nothing, not a single clue. No scraps of clothing, no dropped personal items, no tracks leading away. Searchers later described the scene as unsettling, saying it felt like John had vanished almost instantly. For a man to disappear within sight of camp, so close to friends, was almost impossible to comprehend. So the questions began. How does someone vanish within earshot of a campground? Why were there no signs, no broken branches, no drag marks, no trail of belongings? If John had fallen into the river, why did divers come up empty? The Merced is swift and dangerous in places, but searches were thorough. And in most river accidents, something surfaces: clothing, shoes, or eventually the body itself. For John, there was nothing. Speculation grew. Perhaps he slipped, fell into the water at just the wrong place, and his body was carried into some hidden pocket where searchers never found it. That theory, while possible, seemed thin against the massive efforts made to scour every bend of the river. Others considered foul play, though his friends were cooperative and devastated. There was no evidence of violence, no signs of a struggle. And then there were the stranger ideas. Whispers that Yosemite is a place where people sometimes simply disappear, that the land itself swallows them, leaving no trace. Searchers and locals alike acknowledged how sudden it all felt. One moment John was there, the next gone forever. Years have passed, and the mystery has only deepened. No remains have ever been found, no answers uncovered. His family and friends are left with silence, an absence as heavy as the canyon itself. John Styvers' disappearance is a chilling reminder that even the simplest step, a short walk near camp on familiar ground, can unravel into an unsolvable mystery. In Yosemite, beauty and danger live side by side. One careless step can end in tragedy, or as in John's case, in silence so complete it feels otherworldly. What happened to John Styvers on that June evening remains one of Yosemite's most haunting puzzles. His friends still wonder how a casual stroll became permanent absence, how a man could vanish in seconds without leaving a single trace. In the Merced River Canyon, beneath towering cliffs and whispering pines, John's story lingers. Not a body, not an answer, just the unsettling truth that sometimes people step away from camp and never return. 3 men, 3 vanishings, 3 trails that end in nothing. Michael Feixery, the veteran backpacker whose pack was found but not him. Peter Jackson, the seasoned hiker who vanished on a clear day. John Styvers, the camper who took a short walk and never returned. No bodies, no answers. Just silence in the Valley of Stone. Which story stayed with you the most? What do you think really happened? Tell us in the comments. And if you're ready for the next descent into the unknown, subscribe. Because in Yosemite, the trails don't always lead back.